What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Six Man Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Dunn. Super excited for today's episode. I have on Sean Heppes. He is a coach at Trinity-Pawling School, which is a prep school in New York. Super great dude. Talks about his journey so far in coaching and kind of his plans going forward. Before we get into the interview today, just wanted to thank everyone for the continued support. We just hit 100 followers on Instagram. If you could continue to follow that, help me grow that page at the Six Man Podcast. That would be great. Super excited about all the support I've gotten on there. Also, like I mentioned last week, we're now on YouTube, audio only for now. Eventually we'll get to video. But if you could follow the YouTube channel at the Six Man Podcast and continue to like, subscribe, rate, all that stuff on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you may listen to the show. But again, thanks for the continued support. Let's get to the interview. All right. I'm here with Sean Heppes. Sean, what's going on?
Not much, Phil. How are you, brother?
Great. Thanks for coming on the pod. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
So to start, I want to talk about like your beginnings in basketball as a player. So how did you start playing? Did you come from like a basketball family? Who first put the ball in your hands?
I would say it was probably my dad. Just growing up, he's from Middletown, so he was one of five boys, so they played every single sport you can imagine growing up. I'd say probably kindergarten, maybe first grade. He ran St. Pat's CYO growing up, so having an older brother, he just threw me right in there and said, "Hey, go figure it out, Sean. Just go play." So that was like really great playing older guys, like at such a young age, just kind of getting exposed to everything that was there. You know what I mean?
I feel like that's like always big with like younger siblings. I feel like younger siblings like usually turn out better just because they're always playing against like their older brothers and their older brothers' friends. So you're a Monroe guy, right?
Yeah.
So did you grow up like playing AAU, playing like CYO, Monroe, and stuff like that?
So I played St. Pat's from second grade all the way up. So I played all the way up until eighth grade. So I saw you had Alex, you had AK-47 on here the other day.
Yep.
I played against him growing up, Drew Tanous. Did Jake play for St.
St. Stephen's?
Yes,
Yeah,
St. Stephen's?
He played a year or two, maybe.
Yeah, because I played against TJ growing up, and TJ and I went to Burke together for 1 year.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I remember seeing Jake every now and then. But that whole lacrosse team was good. That's who I played against growing up. They were good. Kyle Filipowski played for Holy Cross, and his brother. I don't know if it's Matt or whichever one it was. But I just remember they were good. I mean, they were big, but they weren't bad. That's why Kyle's in the NBA now.
Yeah, for sure. From a young age, did you know that you wanted to become a coach, or was it something like after you stopped playing, after your playing days were over, you kind of wanted to stay in the game or something like that?
It kind of, my dad was a coach, so my dad was my coach up until eighth grade, and it just like in the car rides home, it was never like, oh, what I did wrong. It was like just teaching me about the game. We would call, we ran the flex. And it would be, in the car ride home, he would say, oh, what happens if they cut this off? Well, we should probably just go to the next option, Dad, or do whatever, and that's how, that's how I was taught the game. It wasn't on the court so much as in the car rides home, watching my brother because they ran the exact same stuff and seeing those older guys play and learning what structure really was. My dad was a fundamental guy. My dad is, he's old school. So kind of just learning, it's very fundamentals. All of our practices were fundamental. We pressed, which, helped get us possessions and just play basketball. But when we didn't get a stop in our press and we had to get a half court stop, we'd walk it across half court and we'd run the flex, or we would run, two bigs or horns or something like that. And, learning that just really helped me when I became a coach. It's like, I understand structure. And unfortunately, my sophomore year of high school, I was playing in gym class. I went up for a layup and my leg just snapped. And that was like the end of the playing days. Like I enjoyed playing basketball still at that point. I was like, I would have been a good JV player. I would have made varsity. Wouldn't have played a lot at Burke. But when I broke my leg, I just was like, I lost all my love for the game. Like I was heartbroken. I stayed on, and that's kind of where I started coaching. My dad me and my siblings were all out of the program at that time. And he was like, hey, I'm just going to take a second and third grade team, help him out. He's like, he needs someone, they need someone who wants to coach. He kind of wanted to get rid of the parent coaches, which we'll get into, I'm sure. Knowing myself, I'll get into that in a few minutes. But just the way, he got back into coaching, and he just was like, "Hey, do you want to help me?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." I was hurt. I didn't have anything else going on. And I didn't have a job because I couldn't really walk. So he would just drive me to practice, and I'd sit down with the little kids. I'd mess around with them, and I'd teach them a thing or two. And that's kind of why I fell in love with it. It was like just kind of it was coaching at its purest form. There was no, we're not here to win.
Yeah.
None of you guys are getting recruited. You're 6, you're 8 years old. It was there was no rankings at that time for the class of 2050 or whatever they are now. Like
Yeah.
there was none of that. It was just, hey, I'm Coach Sean. I'm here to help you. Like let's learn how to come to a jump stop. Let's learn, how to get around a screen. Let's learn all these other things, and that's where I kind of fell in love with the coaching aspect. Was just it was just teaching. That's all it was.
That's like one of the best aspects of coaching. Like I love coaching the little kids.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like you said, like it's not about winning. Like you teach the kids literally how to play basketball. It's not even X's and O's. Like you're just teaching them the fundamentals of basketball, and like their brains at that age, like they absorb stuff so like quickly, like they're eager to learn and stuff. How many years did you do that for?
So that was my sophomore year. I helped my dad out. My junior year, I'm the same age as Jake, so just kind of.
Yeah.
So we did that my sophomore, junior year. Then COVID hit. I would have done it my senior year. I ended up sitting out my junior year. I was an okay lacrosse player, so I liked playing lacrosse. I had a job. Basketball, like I said, it just like I lost the love for playing. Like I was hurt, I was scared. I was never super athletic. So like when I played in Newburgh, I played for the Panthers and I played with some of those guys. Like my job was sit in the corner and shoot. So I was never really take guys off the bounce or guarding the best player. So I just stopped. I couldn't move as well anymore. I stopped loving it. So just helping him out. So my senior year, when it all stopped, I went back to play for. I think we had a 3-week season. Like Alex was saying last week, it was BS. It was so useless.
That was my first experience. I think that was my first year coaching. I got on the staff the COVID year. It was definitely interesting.
Yeah, that was we will never see a season like that ever again. And I really, I'm not going to over it. Like I really hope we will never do that, because I was like, okay, I missed junior year. I really want to play again. We had a new coach. I love John Kelly, by the way. When he was at Burke, I loved him.
He's a great coach.
And then when he went to Bosco, Pat Harris came in, and Pat Harris used to work me out when I was in 7th and 8th grade. So it was like a dream come true. Like the way I learned how to play defense, I learned how to play under, just such great coaches growing up, that like when he got there my senior year, I was like, oh, let's do this. Like, we'll be done with the mask spot, the masks, I don't know, November, December, and then we'll be good. We'll have a late start. Like February rolled around, and we were like, yeah, you have to get your temperature checked every day before, it was so stupid. But what we learned in those when I learned playing for him for 3 weeks, like I wouldn't trade that for the world. Like just having that 3 weeks, and we really came together as a group. We were a pretty young team. A lot of our seniors, hadn't really played varsity the year before. A lot of us were just coming back from other sports. So a lot of our team were considered, a lot of the young guys. So we had juniors that were pretty good, that really helped. We had some sophomores. Jack O'Boyle, who ended up scoring 1,000 points, he was going to move up. And then the game before he was going to get moved up, our season got shut down because kids got COVID. So,
I hope we never see anything like that again.
I really hope not, Phil. It was the best experience playing for Coach Harris again.
Yeah.
But like it sucked because we only had it for like 3 weeks. And just when we hit that, we hit our stride. We got into a really good groove. Guys are starting to buy in, played really well. Like we were diving on loose balls in practice with masks on. And I don't know if you've ever been in Burke. That is the hottest gym in the country. It's.
I used to love playing in Burke's gym though. I love like the small gym. Felt like the crowd was on top of you.
And the crowd was crazy. Like we used to do some crazy stuff in the crowd. We used to all dress up in red, and we had to have a guy dress up as Moses. He would part the Red Sea at halftime. we used to say like a Hail Mary during timeouts, and we'd scream it. Like that was probably the best student section with Kenny Primus and Andre Paul, and they were seniors and I was a freshman, and I was a transfer, so I didn't get to play. So I was hyped just to be there. So that was such a great team.
I remember those teams.
Oh, it was a great team.
So you obviously got to play for Coach Harris, and then you coached under Coach Harris as well, right? Weren't you the freshman coach there?
Yeah, so my freshman year of college, I was an accounting major. I was helping people do their taxes, and I saw him. He lives in Cornwall, so I'm doing my work in Cornwall. I see him in the middle of the street. I hadn't seen him since I graduated. I like lean on the horn. I'm like, Coach, 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 and he's like, who the heck, who is this guy? Like, so he walks over and he realizes it's me. He's like, oh, hey, Hep, how you doing? And we just got to talking. I got his number, and I wanted him to help train my CYO team that I was coaching at the time. So that same second and third grade team, my freshman year, I was the head coach for them. My dad wanted to take a step back from coaching. My sister was cheering. He's like, Sean, you're ready. You take him. Figure it out. I said, okay, whatever. So Harris came and trained him. And after like 2 or 3 weeks, I dropped the ball. I said, hey, do you need any coaches on your staff? Like, I'd love to come in and just help out, even if it's like once every now and then, or just train guys in the off season, whatever. I want to learn. Like, I want to learn from you because you're the best coach I know. And I want to. If I'm not getting
too. For anyone listening that doesn't know, Coach Pat Harris was the Patriot League Coach of the Year while coaching at Army West Point. Just to kind of give his resume for anyone that may not know. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I was going to get into that eventually. Yeah, he played for Mike Krzyzewski at Army. Him and I spoke many times. He had like 25 Division I offers coming out of high school. Like, how insane that is to like that. Like, how many guys now have Division I offers with all the social media we have now? Like, there's not that many guys that are holding them many offers. And Pat Harris was holding them. Like, that's just insane. But no, so he asked me to come in. The guy who was coaching there had been asked to leave as the freshman coach. He didn't come back, and the job opened up. And I was like, awesome. Like, this is great. So I was getting ready for the off season. Our conversation was, Sean, I don't care about wins. I don't care if you score 20 points a game as a team, as long as they learn how to play defense and learn how to cut, and then when they get to JV, they'll be more skilled and go from there. And I was like, this sounds like a great job. This is awesome. There's no pressure. I get to learn from you. I'll be the assistant coach for the varsity. Awesome. Pete DeLeo, who was at the time the JV coach at Burke, takes the girls varsity job at Nanuet. And this is like October 1st. So we're getting ready to start. Like, we're already holding off-season workouts, having our preseason stuff. And I get a call from Pat. It's like 9 o'clock at night. He's like, hey, Sean, Pete just told me he's not coming back. Can you please take the JV job? And I was like, Coach, I don't know. I'm in school full time. I got to find a job to work. He's like, Sean, just do it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. For you, Coach, I'll do it. And probably one of the best decisions I ever made as a young man, as a coach. Like, it was amazing. I got to be the head coach for the JV team. A lot of times our JV and varsity were either back to back or we would share the court. Yeah. So having to go from my practice to varsity practice right after, and just understanding like, oh, this is okay. I'm doing it right. Like I understand. Like, I'm teaching the same stuff he is. I had to dumb it down a lot because, one, I was a new coach and I only had like 9 guys my first year. Like, can you imagine having 9 guys on JV team? Yeah. It's a small school like that. It's just what you run. Yeah, and it wasn't like I was allowed to hop in. Like, they told me like the AD was like, Sean, you're not allowed to play with them. Like, it's against the law, or like something like if you go up for a rebound and you land on some kid's ankle or some kid lands on your ankle, like, you're done. And I was like, all right, whatever. So a lot of times, like, you had to get creative. Like, we did a lot of 3-on-3, we did a lot of 4-on-4. And we played 5-on-5 like very rarely. I got lucky that like Dylan DeMauro and I think they had 2 or 3 sophomores. Ryan Shust came down 1 or 2 practices, just to help me out. Like, I was like, dude, I need 5 for 5-on-5. Yeah, and it was lucky having those guys to come in and just help me out, even if it was for a couple practices, because we never practiced 5-on-5. It was all 4-on-4 and all 3-on-3 concepts, which I think is super useful at any age. Is for kids to play in 3-on-3, 4-on-4. A lot of it is 1-on-1 or 1-on-0, and a lot they just don't learn that way anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. The game is advanced too much for 1-on-0 stuff to be, to be your main source of training.
100%. So outside of like coaching school ball, when did you first get onto the coaching scene in AAU?
So I my freshman year I worked for Kieran Begley in Drive Sports. So I'd helped him out. we played in those wing league tournaments. So I had like a sixth grade team, seventh and eighth grade team. So I just helped them out. That really wasn't, it helped me because I was doing like 6 or 7 games in a weekend, head coaching. So, wing
Yeah.
league would put 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock up till like 1 o'clock game. And I would just bang them out, and just coach and coach and coach and coach and coach. Really helped me like get my coaching voice. And it just showed me a different side because CYO, there was a little bit more structure and there was a lot more
Yeah.
leniency given to kids, they weren't calling as many travels. It was really about the game, not about winning. AAU, it was like they were strictly there to win and walk out with a t-shirt. And I think we won as a program 3 games the entire season. Like it was demoralizing sometimes. Like there'd be weekends,
Yeah.
you get up on a Sunday morning and you're like, dude, I have an 8 a.m. tomorrow and I have to go lose 7 games in a row. It was tough, and you really gotta love it to walk in and do stuff like that, and
100%.
that's where that was when I knew like I want to do this. Like I knew I love coaching enough to just say screw it, I'm just gonna do it. Like you might not, I might be in the red a lot of time in college. You're not gonna make a lot of money and all your time's going to it, so you can't really find another job on top of school.
Yeah.
I just said screw it, like I have to do it. And then then Burke happened. I was at Burke for 2 years. My first year, I was the head JV coach, assistant to the varsity, and we won. We won as a 5 seed. We won the section as a 5 seed, and it was really crazy. We beat Chester, who we had lost to twice during that year, and that was a big rival for us for the last 3 or 4 years now. We ended up we beat Chester at home. Then we went up to Spackenkill as the 5 seed, beat the 1 seed. And that was a crazy experience because that was the first time that I had really like been scouted before. Like I had the experience to being scouted. We went like this for Chin,
Yeah.
the Princeton look, and you hear the other coach, Chin, Chin, Chin. He's screaming the whole time. The guy, they knew exactly what we were doing. We were really lucky that we had Jake DeMauro and Jack O'Boyle because without those 2 guys, like we were not gonna win that game from a scoring perspective. We had a really tough time scoring that game, and those 2 guys could just fill it up. You know what I mean? And then we went on to play O'Neill, and that was at Monroe Woodbury,
Yeah.
and that was the best game I've ever been a part of at that time, because the year after we played Ellenville, that was the best game I've ever been to. But we played O'Neill, and they had our number during the year. They beat us twice. We beat them at our place. We lost to them at their place. And, we were reeling. We weren't expecting to get to the section championship. We had lost to O'Neill the year before in the section finals. So, and it didn't help. We were like a 7-man, like we ran like a 6, maybe 7-man rotation. And then we had to go play at Monroe Woodbury. And O'Neill had like 11 seniors who had all been playing for 3 years now. They played AAU together in the springtime. Like those guys were in shape. And for us, we played half court man to man, and we weren't a pressing team. We never were. And then we have to go play in a college level arena coming from Burke. And that was one of the hardest games we ever played. Brandon Minley had, a guy who had, he started some games, came off the bench. He had like 17 points that game. He played out of his mind. Ryan Sunheimer took a charge at the end of the game. Then he had he kept going off 1 foot during the year, and he just like in the championship, he came to 2 feet. The guy flew right by him. He had a wide open layup to seal the game. Like, and that was the
awesome.
first like year 1 for me. I was hooked. Like that was the biggest high I ever felt. Like being there and like holy shit, we just won. Like as a 5 seed. Like no one thought we would win. We beat the 4 seed, we beat the 1 seed, and then we beat the 2 seed. So we beat everybody. And it was just a great experience. Like my first year, coaching some of the guys that you played with, bro. Like, as a senior, I played with Jake DeMar, I played with Brandon, I played with Jack growing up. Like, and then 3 years later to get to coach those guys again and win as a group was such a special feeling. And that's what got me hooked on coaching. Like I'll never leave the profession. Like
That's all it takes too.
It
You're
just
always
takes
chasing
one
that
game.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was. I wouldn't trade it for the world. That was probably one of the best experiences of my life. You know what I mean?
What's the biggest difference you see in coaching between AAU ball and high school ball,
I
or
think
some
for
of the
high
differences?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference is the amount of structure that's there. A high
Yeah,
school team is a lot more structured. I also think there's a lot more politics in high school ball. This kid's mom's on the board, this kid's parents do this and that. The coach is also a teacher, like so they have to answer the five, six different things. They're running a program that they are hired to do. AAU, you can just
yeah,
I could start one up today and go grab 10 kids and throw them in a wing league tournament, and we might win or we might lose. I think just the
yeah,
culture around AAU and um, in high school ball is a lot different too. I'm not a big fan of those money grab tournaments. When I was in high school and I was in middle school, I loved those. Going down to Jersey, going down to Ramapo College, and now like even the ones that you
yeah,
bring your guys to, you see it there's just no effort into it anymore. Like you
yeah,
do a great job with
yeah,
your guys. You play within structure, you coach them hard, and you have a lot of different age groups, and they all play pretty good amount of minutes. I mean, usually I'm trying to be
yeah.
focused on the game, not what you're doing. I'm trying to ref the game, but it's you know I just high school ball is so much. There's so much more structure to it, and it really helps kids develop. And in the springtime, all these kids get to just go play. It's run up and down. It's like a glorified pickup, and they pay $300 a tournament to just go run up and down the floor. You can go do that in the off season with your high school kid, with the high school team, and I think they
Yeah,
get more out of that. But the high level AAU, I was on the made hoop circuit. I was coaching for the East Coast Cyclones, and the 17U team lost in the championship for the entire circuit. They were 29 and 0, and then they lost in the finals. I was a 16U head coach, and the made hoop circuit does it correctly. They are one of the in my opinion, I think they're the best independent circuit in the country. Um, I think all the sneaker programs, all the the sponsored, the Adidas, the Puma,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Nike, Under Armour,
yep.
all of those are fantastic for recruiting. But that independent circuit is like the grassroots programs. It's so different than high school. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of athletes. There's all these great public schools and private schools in the Northeast, and then you just put them all together, and that's the made hoops scene. And the structure you get three refs for a 16U game, which is like unheard of in any you don't even get those in Orange County. Sometimes you might get
Yeah,
two refs for a varsity game, and we
yeah,
got 15U games getting three varsity level officials, and they're running up and down. They're busting their ass, like they care, and that's a huge difference from local AAU to those circuits. And I know a lot of people, oh, what circuit are you on? Like, it really does matter now. Like where you are playing if you want to be recruited.
was
I
this your
was
first year coaching on the made hoop circuit?
Yeah. So
What was
I
the
coached. Sorry, what you saying?
I was gonna say, what was that like? Like, were you surprised by how high
Yeah,
level it was, or did you know going in?
I knew going in a little bit.
Yeah,
I was actually working the Army Elite Camp last year, and the head coach and director of the Cyclones, just he had some guys there being recruited, and he met me right after and was like, "Hey, you should come work my showcase." And I said, "Okay, sure." I worked a showcase, and he asked me to come coach for him, and I ended up being the 16U head coach. So it came with a lot of recruiting, and I was like, "Oh, okay, there's some pretty good guys. Always only like 5'10". He was like, "Sean, I don't. If the kid's anything shorter than 6 foot, he must be a Division I player." And I said, "Okay." And I haven't looked at a kid below 6'2" in probably 8 months. Like
yeah,
it's the size difference. I didn't realize how big the size difference was going to be. Like the team that was assembled for me, our big was 6'7". We had three kids that were 6'5". One was 6'6". We had a 6'3" shooting, 6'3" guard. We had a 6'2" point guard, and then we had a 6'1" guy who came off the bench. And that was just our 16U team. Our 17U team was a 6'1" shooter, 6'5" point guard, 6'4" two guard, 6'4" from Orange County, Anthony Pacquiarelli. He played for us. At 6'8", forward, like stretch four, 6'7", stretch four, 6'5". Like the size difference
yeah,
was something that I never had. The largest guy
yeah,
I ever coached was Jack O'Boyle, who was like 6'3",
yeah,
and and he was a shooter, so it wasn't like he was really going up and dunking on guys. Like when I got to the program and we had our first practice, our tryouts, like there were maybe like 3 kids in the gym that couldn't dunk, 4 people if you want to count me. Like it was insane. Like just the size difference that you had with these guys and the talent level. These guys were all at prep schools. If they weren't at prep schools, they were going to prep school next year. It was just such a huge difference from what I was used to. And then I was like, oh my gosh, we have an amazing team. We're really good. And then I go, then I go to the Made Hoops. I go to Spooky Nook. I go to Queens. And, we beat some teams. We had a good 2-0 start at Spooky Nook. And then we ran into Carmelo Anthony's 16U team from the DMV. And I swear to God, Phil, they must have had 7 kids that were like, they looked older than me. I just turned 22. Like these guys look like they were my age. They look like they should have been having, they had a wife and kids at home. They drove themselves to the game. And I was like, holy shit, there's levels to this. Like I knew there was levels to this when I was playing. And it was just so crazy how, just the size difference, the talent difference, the Made Hoop scene. It was like, it was really eye opening for me. And it really, and I met a lot of college coaches there too. Built a lot of connections from that. I mean, I had some, previously just from going to clinics and stuff, but it really opened my eyes up to like how big basketball really is and how insane like the landscape is now for high school kids.
Speaking of connections, I was going to ask you about like connections and relationships in basketball. Like how important do you think that is in terms of like making the next step up in coaching? Obviously, it's super important, but talk a little bit about it.
It's probably the most important thing. I would say relationships are the most important thing. My high school coach is Pat Harris, and that helped me get into, Army. And so it was pretty easy to start working camps. And then one of the assistant coaches asked me to come back and do it again. And then he ended up taking a job somewhere else, and I almost had a GA position over there. I was one of the final guys. If they didn't have a player who wanted the job, it probably would have went to me, he told me. So, just relationships and just building and keeping relationships and staying in contact are super important. And it also, you never know who's going to go where. The D3 assistant, now in 10 years could be a Division I assistant. And in 10 years after that, he could be a Division I head coach. And so I do everything I can to, just try and stay in contact with the people you meet. Because you never know where guys are going to end up. I'm sure there's guys who, as someone who didn't play in college, I didn't really get to play in high school. There's guys who probably wrote me off and were probably like, oh, like, this kid wasn't a player. I think he's probably not a good coach, great coach, or, even just an okay coach. And, now I'm at a prep school and they're probably like, damn, I wish I stayed in contact with him. And it happens to a lot of people. A lot of people think that prep school or Division III or JUCO that it's not Division I, so it's not good enough. It's the opposite. Those are the guys. Those are the future of the game. Those even Section 9 high school coaches. You never know where those guys are gonna move up, where they're gonna go after, and just keeping relationships and building relationships is super important if you want to move up. And even if you don't want to move up, it's always great to have them because now those guys are coming to you for players. And it's super important to have those. And I think, in the world that we're in right now, it's become transactional. Like, oh, Phil, what can you do for me? Oh, well, you don't have any players that I want. Well, screw you. I'm not going to talk to you for 3 years. And then I'll text you back when you have a 6'6" wing who I really want as a division level prospect. And it's like, it's not, it doesn't work like, and the world doesn't work like that. It can't be transactional. And all those guys who do have transaction relationships, that they'll get somewhere in the short term. But the guys who keep their long-term relationships are the guys who, those are the guys that make it far. And those are the guys who stay in the game. It's ruthless. There's guys who get fired like that. Good friend of mine is Tobin Anderson from Iona. He went to the MAC championship, lost, and was fired on Monday. He was in Atlantic City Saturday night, lost. Okay, whatever. They took one day to let him get home. Then they fired him on Monday morning. It's such a crazy world, and it's just not. If you really want to get to that higher level, like you've really got to have relationships, and you really got to want to keep those relationships because you can get canned real quick. And if you don't have anybody to fall back on, you're done. You don't have any relationships with somebody else, with another assistant or a head coach somewhere where you can get an assistant job for a year or two and make your way back up or make a lateral move. Like you're screwed. It's hard to break back in. It's easy to get in. It's hard to stay in. And once you're out, it's even harder to get back in. And a lot of people, our age don't understand that.
So you kind of hinted at it there, but talk a little bit about Trinity-Pawling and how that opportunity came about and what your role is going to be there for the upcoming season.
Yeah, so when I was with the Cyclones, part of my job was to recruit guys. Just being a New York guy and being close to the city and having some just Division I connections just from going to clinics and things like that. Always reaching out and saying, hey, look, do you know anybody who I should be looking at to kind of get with our program, and then kind of reciprocate that and say, hey, can I get him back to you? One of those guys is Anthony Pacquiarelli. He played at St. Joe's, but he's another Monroe guy. I've known him, my whole life now. Played CYO growing up, so I've known him a long time. And part of my job was also kind of connecting our players with prep schools. And one of the prep schools, was Trinity-Pawling, and trying to get a few players there. And it didn't work out for those guys. They didn't, for whatever reason. They went to one kid went to another school. Anthony ended up going to Orange County Community College. Great, he had a great offer from there, and they're really great guys. They're John Back and Tom Ricardo, great guys. So head coach and I, when Anthony didn't work out, we just kind of stayed in contact. And there was a math teaching job open, and that's where my degree is. That's what my degree is in, that I just graduated with, and just kind of moved into it. And I interviewed. It all happened really fast. I wasn't, he told me, hey, you should probably interview for this. Like, it's a math job. Like, I don't know what your goals are, what you want to do. I was still looking for a Division I GA spot. And he was like, Sean, just apply. I said, okay. So I applied around Memorial Day weekend. Right after that, we had my first interview with HR. I had my next interview with the head of schools and the head of the math department. That Friday, head coach Tariq Smith, he called me that night. They'd offered me the position. He was like, hey, come to campus tomorrow. I know, take the weekend, think about it. Let's just have you on campus and just get a feel for everything. I said, okay, fine. So go Saturday morning, him and I, he takes me around. Then we talk a little bit about basketball stuff, how he really wants to utilize, my connections, and he wants me to utilize his connections. He played Division III at Tufts. He sent a couple players to Division III, Division I, Division II. So he was, some guys went overseas after TP. So he was like, let's build this together. Like, you're young, you still need a master's degree. Like, school's going to pay for that. Let's build something special here. And, it just kind of fell into my lap. And it really, like I said, it really just came from relationships. There was a guy, it didn't work out with our player, and I just stayed in contact with him. And, he was like, hey, there's a job. And now I'm in the NEPSAC, I'm in the Founders League. I get to recruit now. It's just been a really great opportunity for me just to kind of, it wasn't Division I, but, I have a great job as a math teacher. They're paying for my apartment. I'm still at my house right now. I move in next week, but, it really just comes down to relationships. Like, having a relationship with Tariq kind of led me to having this job. I'm unqualified as a math teacher, and, but as a coach, I was qualified enough for him to stick his neck out for me. So, that's really what it comes down to.
That's awesome, dude. And that's exciting for sure. Talk a little bit about your goals in coaching basketball. Like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and where do you want to? You said before, like, you'll never give the profession up. But like, do you think it'll get to a point where, like, say it goes really well at Trinity-Pawling? Obviously, it's probably too early to say, but like, if you like teaching there and stuff, could you see yourself being there long term? Or are you trying to climb the ladder?
Right now, I just think that I've been around guys who I've been around a lot of Division I guys. Being really close at Army. I live 20 minutes from there. I work all their camps. Some of their kids play CYO for me. And just seeing what that lifestyle is like, and just seeing how volatile the world is. If you asked me a year ago, I would have said I want to be a Division I head coach. Like, that's where I see myself in 10 years. Whether it's possible or not, I mean, it is possible. There's, a guy at Nicholls State. I think he's 27. And he's the head coach over there. Now he had a little bit of a different road. He was a GA for Buzz Williams and a couple of, he knows Tony Skinn. So, he had a little bit of different connections. But, now it's, and the same thing I tell my players, it's really about fit. It's really about what the fit is like for Sean Heppes. Is it, maybe the money isn't as great as, maybe some other prep school, or maybe, the talent level isn't as great, but, am I in a good spot? I'm an hour from where I live now. They're gonna cover my master's degree. I'm living at, they're paying for my apartment. I'm teaching math, which is something I always wanted to do. So maybe it is 5 years from now. I'll reassess where I am. Maybe 10 years from now, I wouldn't be upset with being a prep school head coach and raising my family on campus. Just being part of a community. Maybe a Division I GA spot opens up next year, and I get a call from them in a year from now. It really just comes down to what the fit's going to be for me. But what the future holds, I don't know. I really don't know. But I just know that I'm happy where I am now, and we're just going to continue from there.
I love what you said about like the fit. The first guest I had on this podcast, guy named Dylan Hod, he kind of like brought up the same thing where he said like, and he always tells people chase the fit, not the level. Like if you fit well where you're at, whether it be JUCO, prep, Division III, NAIA, whatever it is, like that might be better for you than being at a Division I where it's not a good fit for you. You don't have a big role there. There's no room for growth. So I love that you said that. I completely agree. Last question I have for you, Sean. If you could go back in time, obviously you're still young coach. If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice in terms of coaching basketball, what would it be?
I would like to say, there's a quote that I share with a lot of players. I worked a showcase a few weeks ago, and there's a lot of few kids at Division I offers. A lot of guys at Division II offers. Some Division III coaches were there, probably about 60 kids. And when I was asked to speak, I just shared something on character. It was, if you give what you have, you will never need. If you have an hour to give somebody and you really have that hour, give them an hour. You never know when you're going to need an hour from somebody. You never know when you're going to need a phone call from somebody just to work, or you never know when you're going to need advice. You never know what you're going to need from somebody else. So if you have something, give it. And that's what I like to live by. But sometimes sometimes people can't give much. And the other end of it is, if you really want to climb the ladder, you got to have some money in savings. I mean, like I'm just being I'm being open. I know that we don't do this for the money, but if you really want to climb the ladder and you want to get to that Division I level, you want to get to the collegiate level at all, doesn't matter where, you have to have savings. Put $15,000 in the bank, and bet on yourself for a year. I had a job offer from Ole Miss working in the marketing department, and I would have been working directly for Chris Beard, and I didn't have the money to go down, and I hated turning him down because I didn't have the money to move myself across the country, and I ended up having the Trinity-Pawling offer come in a few weeks later. So, it worked out for me, but it could have easily not worked out for me because I didn't have that money. I didn't. I wasn't smart with my money. I wasn't saving. I was, I wasn't smart with my money. We'll put it like that, and if I could go back, and I would have maybe $10,000 in the savings account, and maybe I could say, okay, well, I can support myself for 5 months down there and figure out a way to make money once I am in Mississippi. And that was, one thing that I would tell the younger, anybody who wants to make it in coaching, you have to put some money away before you do anything. You got to make sure that the finances are taken care of, because that should be the last thing you think of. And that was really important for me, why I turned that job down. And maybe it was a mistake turning it down. Maybe it wasn't, but only time will tell.
It's unfortunate, but that is kind of like the nature of the job and the truth behind it. Like, it's hard to face the truth of it sometimes, but that is definitely true and something I agree with. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Sean. I appreciate you talking hoops and everything. Appreciate you coming on the pod.
Anytime, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks so much to Sean for hopping on the pod today. Appreciate everyone tuning in. If you could please like, subscribe, rate on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. Follow on Instagram at the Six Man Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube at the Six Man Podcast. I appreciate all the support. We'll see you next week. Thanks.